This is Steve Stoute, who started his career by achieving the dream of every hip-hop fan, which is that he found his way into the record industry, first working with Kid and Play, and then working with the rapper Nas, eventually winding up at Interscope Records. And after a string of successes there, he achieved every record executive's dream, which is that he found his way out of the record industry. He left to work on marketing and advertising, formed the Pass agency with Peter Arnell, and then more recently struck out on his own, teaming up with Jay-Z to form Translation, an advertising agency aimed at doing what?
Really aimed at speaking to helping brands do a better job at communicating towards this new generation of consumers, that don't see color and they have like mindsets. That is often tricky for brands to get their attention, and we built the agency to do that.
When you come and you're brought in to talk to someone at a brand, of all the things you say to them, what surprises them most?
Well, typically, when we work primarily with Fortune 500 companies, and there's this traditional way of thinking where you put people into boxes. And it was very convenient for years to put people into boxes. So whether it be demographic layout, so you just get, African Americans, Latinos, whites, and then you break up the age groups. There was never any model or any thought on how to communicate towards people of like mindsets. So there was no mindset breakout. It was always just age and color breakouts. And the mindset breakout has been very, very tricky. And what I realized early on, when I was leaving the record business, was that there was an opportunity there to help educate these brands on how to speak to this mindset. I knew about the mindset from coming from the record business. There was a lot of education in the record business. I grew up, I used to make rap records. I used to make R&B and rap records, and I started seeing slowly over time where a record would appeal strictly to that box, an African-American kid. Then you started seeing it bleed and go towards suburbia. We used to always look at it through zip codes. And when we started selling rap records in Salt Lake City, Utah, we realized there was an opportunity there because there was a mindset there. And if you tapped into that mindset, you could actually gain a competitive advantage over the big traditional agencies that never ever paid attention to that kid that lived in Salt Lake City, Utah, who wanted to wear his hat backwards. They didn't understand that.
The one thing I think it's good to hear you talk about it. We should also perhaps show some of this. One thing that's changed, I know, in the advertising business as a whole is that the line between culture and advertising, between pop music and a commercial, is getting really blurry. And one of the most egregious examples of this I've seen was at a conference where people were expecting to hear a lively discussion and instead wound up watching TV commercials.
I'm going.
Oh, yeah. Everybody clap your hands. Come on, y'all. Check it out, y'all. How low can you go? Can you go down low? I'm out of here, y'all. Peace, peace.
Got my whole life in this thing. Check out this new song I'm mixing. Got the new Rock Aware campaign.
Shot it in Aspen. Love playing chess online. Hold on. This game is over. Gotta track all my investments because I'm retired, right? My passport says Sean, but you may know me by another name. Holla.
HP Pavilion Notebooks. The computer is personal again.
Buy you a Chevrolet, buy you a Chevrolet, go buy you a Chevrolet, if you give me some of your love.
Holding hands and skimming stones, had an old gold Chevy and a place of my own.
Top is down on the black Corvette, and it's fly 'cause it's sitting on Dayton.
And I wouldn't trade on Leroy or my Chevrolet for your freak parade.
I like my beats down low and my top lit. Bet you see me ride 24 in my Impala with black.
Save my dimes, giddy up, 409.
Nobody can shut that Chevy down, 'cause that brand new Chevy is mine.
I got that seat, call me Jeff Gordon, in the black SS with navigation.
No, we're not the jet set, we're the old Chevrolet set, but ain't we got love?
No, we're not the jet set, we're the old Chevrolet set.
I wanted to show those commercials that Kay made fun of, you guys watching commercials, but those commercials have something in common. The commercials all allowed a cultural observation to speak and be put on a large platform. You know, for Nike to take street culture and street basketball and mix it with dance and then run it during CSI, you know, that's a great jump in communications. That's paying attention to what's taking place from a cultural element, what's being built, and giving it a chance to breathe. You look at that, you take in the Jay-Z HP spot. For them to allow him to throw his hands up at the end of the commercial, something that signifies his company and what he's about, for them to do that and not think that that was some gang sign or something that would be harmful, that takes a big leap of faith for these companies to do that. And you know, we worked on that. We worked on those commercials, and I'm proud because that's what culture says, and you got to let culture dictate what's taking place at retail. You can't just push the message down on the consumer, and that's where a lot of brands have lost its way. We've seen Polaroid lose its way. We've seen Kodak not paying attention to what consumers' tastes and needs are, and that's the niche that we found in the marketplace.
Let me ask you about selling out. For an earlier generation, and certainly for the rock and roll generation, traditionally, there was a certain uncomfortableness, sometimes abhorrence, of the idea of artists appearing in commercials, and there was all this angst about, is it gonna be cool? Is it gonna dilute what we stand for? A lot of people remember, for example, in the 1980s when Neil Young famously took a stand against this, and the hip-hop generation seems to have a different view of this. What is that view, and why is it different?
Well, the hip-hop generation did something unique. I liken the hip-hop to rock, where they both went countercultural. So, you know, when the Beatles landed, there was this whole thing about, you know, there was this Leave It to Beaver sort of feeling in America, right? It was the nuclear family. And rock and roll came in and it sort of shook things up, and the Beatles landed and it put a whole new generation, Generation X, and how they seen the world, and it was different from their parents. Hip-hop did the exact same thing. But what hip-hop did differently was the entrepreneurism out of hip-hop. These guys said, I'm going to create culture and I'm going to actually make money off of it. I'm not only going to sell the record, but I'm going to sell the T-shirt, and I'm going to sell the pants, and I'm going to sell the clothing line. You know, I don't know why Madonna didn't sell the jacket back in 1984. I don't know why Michael Jackson never sold his jacket or the glove. And it was all because if you did that, it said the wrong thing. Meanwhile, you fast forward 15 years later, 20 years later, an artist like Jay-Z is just as credible, but yet he can sell a clothing line and he could sell items. Puff Daddy has sold many things, and yet you could still maintain a certain level of authenticity and credibility with your culture. So I do believe that the business model of hip-hop definitely changed that authentic conversation. And then you see the guy, I mean, I think the poster child for that no selling out thing was Bob Dylan. And then he ends up in a Victoria's Secret ad.
What's one of the many brands you've worked with is Tommy Hilfiger, which became obviously adopted into some part by the hip hop culture. And for many years there was this urban legend going around, totally false, that Tommy Hilfiger said he didn't want black people wearing his products. More recently, there was a famous interview in The Economist with Frederic Rousseau from Cristal, where he was asked about hip-hop's embrace of Cristal champagne, and he said, "We can't forbid people from buying it," which famously prompted Jay-Z to say he was going to switch to drinking and rapping about rosé instead. Obviously, with what you're doing, there has been some change, and brands aren't scared of being associated with hip-hop. My question is, insofar as a lot of this embrace of brands is aspirational, something you look up to, how do you mix that with hip-hop culture and keep the aspirational flavor?
I don't want to call it hip-hop culture. I really like to speak of a generation of kids. You know, if a kid at 15 years old, you know, his father walks around with a Metallica t-shirt. Kid at 15 years old, he listened to Run DMC, so he's going to wear his Adidas a certain way. He's going to wear his hat a certain way because the music that inspired him was Run DMC. You know, some people actually turn around and call that kid a white kid trying to be a black kid. I just call that a white kid that grew up in the 80s. And his music influence had him dress a certain way. So that's the generation that I'm speaking of. The aspiration is something that all generations seek towards. You want to, you know, you want to move up, you want to advance your taste, you want to advance and see what the finer things in life are. And for brands such as Cristal or Tommy Hilfiger, he claims he's never done that, but to sort of resist this new generation that embrace their clothing or embrace their spirits because it's something that it's something that's aspirational, and they push away from it because they feel like if they embrace that audience, they're going to turn off their audience, their loyalists before then because they don't want to be associated. That's bad business. That's bad business. And the way we bridge that gap, I believe, is really being sensitive towards what the brand stands for, but yet still embracing this new generation. If you do not accept what generation and what culture says to you, you will go out of business. And we've seen too many companies, too many times, just go completely out of business or lose their way because they forgot that what the next teenager trend is going to be or what the next group of kids are thinking, and they just lost their way and go out of business.
One of many things that you've been able to do is to partner with companies and get them to use music in an innovative way. I remember when Jay-Z was working with Reebok, there was his shoe was the S. Carter, and he dropped the S. Carter collection mixtape to cross-promote with the shoe. Obviously, Justin Timberlake, working with McDonald's, took what I thought was actually a not very good Justin Timberlake song and extracted the really good part, which was ba-da-ba-ba-ba, and turned that into a big campaign. If you have these major corporations that are sponsoring or commissioning new music, paying the artists, and finding a way to get people to hear that music, do we still need record companies?
Record companies, unfortunately, give you a little education. When in the late 80s, when the new format of CDs came out, we all in this room had our cassette tape of whether it be Neil Young's greatest hits or Madonna's greatest hits, whatever it was, and then you had to buy it again on CD. So therefore, there was a complete lift in the business. And that ended up becoming fool's gold for the industry because
crack.
They were making, crack, whatever. It was fool's gold because they seen their revenues rise because there was this increased margin on CDs and everybody was buying records twice. When the format changed to digital, it went the other way. People said, you know what, now I don't have to buy 14 songs when I only like one. And they weren't prepared for that. And their lack of preparation for that has caused the demise of that industry. And it's tough because music is more popular than ever right now. I mean, everybody likes music. It's accessible. You can cut your faucet on and get music. I mean, there's music everywhere. The issue is that the companies that sell music are losing their way because they haven't built a model that adjusted towards this new distribution of music. You go into a record store and you're trying to buy Anita Baker CD, and they say go to the jazz section, and you go, oh, I'm sorry, it's not there. Go to the R&B section. You go there, you spend whatever, you take it out, the alarm goes off, you take it back, the alarm, then you go leave again. It was a mistake. And then you try to open it and you break your nail, right, with all the security tape. If that's the customer experience, know that you're going to go out of business.
Are you ever tempted to jump back in a sense, to approach an artist and say, look, I've got Popeyes or someone looking for a new campaign. I've got this unsigned artist. Maybe instead of making albums, you make a couple songs, you make mixtapes, you have them co-branded with Popeyes. Are you ever tempted to sneak back into the record industry?
No, I think that I think that you're going to see much more. You're going to see a day where a General Motors, they spend so much money on putting music in commercials. Look, by the way, you just seen that "Ain't We Got Love" spot, right? With all those references of Chevy in those songs. We all know those songs. Instead of Chevy paying all that money, they and licensing those songs, they can create those songs on their own. And I do believe that you're going to start seeing companies make records in order to use it against their own brands. So you're going to see that. You're going to see the traditional record company lose its way to big packaged good companies that use music to sell a product. They'll take it over, but I'm not going to get into it. Verizon's in the record business. Verizon is signing artists directly to their phone. So when you get a new phone, you can get a Snoop Dogg album, right, embedded. Not that you'd want that, or whoever wants it, but they're going into the record business.
Procter & Gamble.
Procter & Gamble's in the record business.
And Live Nation signed your partner.
Live Nation, which is a concert promoters, they decided they were going to go in the record business by signing Madonna, and recently did a deal with Jay-Z. So the music business has definitely changed. I think it's going to be better for all of us who are fans of music. I think we're going to get much more choice. And again, just like I guess what this whole thing is about is the consumer has spoken. We all felt for many years we didn't want to buy an album of 14 songs and pay $15.99 when we only liked the first single. The consumer has spoken. That's why the format changed. That's why Steve Jobs found the way in. That's the reason why the business had to change.
You talked earlier about reaching teenagers, and I hope I'm not saying something I'm not supposed to say, but you were born in 1970.
Yeah.
And by any definition of generations, someone who's 15 now is a different generation.
Yes, it is.
How do you protect yourself and your company against the rise of the next Steve Stoute?
By not moving to Jersey. That's true, though. Hiring and young, talented people who really people who are passionate about understanding culture. I don't think that has anything to do with age. In fact, I think that if you stay in contact with what's relevant towards the next generation, you don't have to partake in it. So you don't have to be the last guy in a club at 45, right, to know what's going on. But yet you could still know what's going on without partaking in it. So you have to know your role in culture, but being passionate and trying to pursue what is motivating a young generation. I think as parents, you should know what's going on with your kids. I think you should know what the cultural influences are of their generation as well. So I think there's a thin line there between partaking in culture and being understanding of what moves culture.
That makes sense. I think 5 years in the future, if you're on a subway train and you hear a disturbance, some sort of scuffle, and you look down to the other end of the subway car, and there's a bunch of kids, high school kids, and they're fighting over what looks to be a copy of the New Yorker magazine, you'll know that David Remnick has finally hired Steve Stoute. Thank you very much.